done, probably in my early stage, or few years back and all of that, how I could have done it better, So this topic gave me the opportunity to, reconcile, speak to a few friends and colleagues, what common mistakes do they do and all of that. And I'm quite excited to share as well so that we can all learn from it. It's also important to say that these mistakes are things that have happened to people in real life. So if you feel like your own is not there, yeah, we just picked a few out of it all. And our agenda today is basically looking at common mistakes, use cases of these common mistakes in software testing. What are their effects on the team, the organization, and then mitigation of these mistakes as well. So I decided to add a personal quote from myself. I don't know how I'm going to make this a public quote, but I'll work on that, which is basically, even I recall when I was starting and a few others, and even few years back now, one of the sales points for us as software testers is that, you don't need to know how to code to start. However, things are changing. So software testing is no longer a field reserved for people who doesn't love or like to code, or you don't like to do things that are technical. In fact, software testing now gives you at that level that when you are, people tend to worry, is it that Toby is the DevOps engineer? Is it that Jennifer is a backend engineer? Because you are able to speak on some technical levels and some technical implementations that it looks like, no, this person must have probably been one of the engineers that worked on it. And trust me, software testing is towards that edge as of this time. So there are many common mistakes that are done or that happens today within the software testing domain. And depending on whichever one it is, it has its effects on your application and on your organization as the case may be. However, this is just the seven that I think is common, but I've seen that is common across board. The first one here is lack of domain knowledge. I'm seeing an application as black box only, not getting in love with the application architecture, is not for testers or not understanding the application architecture, neglecting test maintenance, surface or UI level design oversight, and we also have improper testing. So in this session, we are going to be looking at all of these. I'll share one or two use cases with us, and we are going to look at it, right? The first one on my list is lack of domain knowledge. Please, I know I'm a bit fast. Jennifer, please let me know if at any point there's spring in my mouth and I'm going too fast. Did you get that, Jennifer? Okay, thank you. So the first thing on my slide is lack of domain knowledge. Today in the technology industry, for every domain you find yourself, you are going to realize that there are a few compliance related things that has to be met, regardless of the domain. Take, for example, the property management domain. For you to say you are going into a property management domain today, you need to have some form of registration, I think, some form of licensing. You need to have this and all of that. Take, for example, health. I think IPA also is there for health. When it comes to banking, there are some CBN regulation, there are some other things that you have to have. And all of this speaks together into the things that we need. Apart from regulations, when it comes to domain knowledge, it does not only speak to the regulation you think of or or that are probably government reliant only. There are also things that you need to understand. Say, for example, a Mubarak today has an e-commerce site, and this e-commerce site utilizes a delivery management service application. I need to know that, for every test I do to place an order, I need to confirm that my delivery partner actually receives this order. Basically gives you that domain knowledge. And the beautiful thing about having the appropriate domain knowledge for your domain or having this knowledge is that it helps you without even having handled the application. You are able to understand all of these aspects, all of these angles that you want to talk to or that you need to make engagements with while testing the application. So a scenario here on the slide is a tester validating a fintech app. This is quite common where you see a tester say, I'm testing and I use the BVN and this and all of that. Today, one of the BVN regulation is that when you are testing, when you are for every bank, all customers, regardless of their level or tier, needs to have a BVN. If they don't have a BVN, don't issue an account to them. All of these are part of regulations that you need to start putting at the back of your mind while testing. So you know that when I am testing any banking application that I am testing, I need to confirm that we are doing appropriate KYC validation on this application. Oh, we have the right partner, we are doing it, we validated, and we are sure that our validating partner actually gets the request and sending those the appropriate details for the customer that we are trying to validate. So the result of missing out on this domain knowledge, in some cases, I'm using the fintech case here because it's quite common. You see that sometimes you fail audits. Sometimes you have to now do a costly rework where you probably go on live. I have to pull the application back and now have to redo it. And the one of the worst things that could happen is getting fines. And today, civilian fines are not smiling. You get huge fines for missing on things like this. So, for example, another thing here is seeing an application as black box only. And this is really interesting because this is something that has happened to me as a person. And why I'm really saying this is because this I'm thinking of the perfect way to put it. It makes it look like you don't. It makes it look like missing out on this. Sometimes when it happens, makes it look like what have we been testing when it actually happens. So while black box is, one of the most majorly accepted process, or in fact, when you're doing manual testing in most cases, you do it as a black box test. However, it is important for us to know that whatever test you are doing has to be some form of hybrid to it. Yes, I don't write C#, I don't write Java, I don't write Python. I'm probably writing JavaScript that I use in automating. However, it's important for us to undo things, which is one of the things like, for example, a banking absolute interest calculation logic. Today, from my few experience, when it deals with loan interest calculation, one of the approaches that people take is in mathematics today, we have round up and round down, where if it is more than 5, you round up, and when it is lower than 5, you round down to 0. That does not apply. You bring the value as it is. You don't say a 3.8 becomes a 3.8, apologies. Can you still see my screen?
Yes, Mubarak.
Okay. Apologies, please. So you don't round down or round up in situations like this. You have to understand, and in most cases, finance people want you to leave it the way it is. So if you are getting a 3.8, a 32.38, a 32.38 does not become 32.40 as the case may be. Or you are getting 32.95 and you want to turn it to 32.40. No, it becomes a thing around, oh, this is how you keep the value as it is. So having to understand all of this. And the thing around, where it gets interesting and where this speaks to in its actual sense is that a lot of these calculations are not visible to the customer. It's not like, oh, I took a loan from this and we did our interest accrual and I can view my loan. No, that's not how it works. How it works is this loan accrual has a job that is probably being executed at some time in the day, and it probably keeps this information on the table. What happens at that point? You have to go, oh, I've run this job for today. I want to go and check if he has probably done the calculation. If there is any need for you to make some entries, did he do the right entry, and all of that as well. So another thing here that I have on my list is not getting in love with the application. So one of the things is that I have seen over time is that testers and product managers, product owners, and all of that. I think it's always right for us to see the application as the love of our life. And why I'm saying this is because it helps you see things. I don't want a partner that even I myself does not like or does not love. So I want someone that I'm willing to spend a lot of time with. And as such, it means that when you're testing an application, you need to understand how the application works. You need to know what causes this, that causes this, I need this here. One of the things that I love to do when I get onboarded on a project is to understand the project effectively, such that if I need to do something, and even if I need to achieve something, or I need to manipulate some level of data, I know what to do without having to be handheld on the application. This is usually very one of the things that everybody wants to. You want to quickly do the work. You want to quickly test and just go on like that. However, I think it's bad, and the fact that we are not in love with that application you're testing is one of the common mistakes that we make as testers. Application architecture not for testers or not understanding the application. So the application architecture, this is something that is quite common a bit. Testers want to avoid some of our technical documents. In fact, so in some cases, organizations don't want to share. One of the things that I like about myself, or that one of the things that I started doing now is to, even when these documentations are not shared, ask for them or ask questions that require this documentation to come up. Say, for example, you're working on a delivery app, right? And you are relying on a third-party GPS API. You don't know, oh, what's API, which API are we relying on to achieve this? If one of them is down, how many do we have in place? Ask these questions that prompt these artifacts being shared with you. And one of the things here that people tend not to speak about is things around verifications. You want to look at databases. You need to understand what is the architecture of my application. The data that I am inputting and expecting an output, how does my application handle it? I used to work with a tester, not in Nigeria, and I think he's a Pakistan person, and I learned quite a few things from him. This guy understood the application architecture to the point where he understands that, oh, if you need take for example, I need an admin user and this user does not have something. He knows what to do on the DB level to enable the user have that information. He knows a lot around the application architecture that I can tell you that, oh, this particular endpoint is speaking to this database, and he has all of this information. And what this helps you do is, in cases where there are input issues, you are able to identify that I think the problem is this endpoint. I've seen testers when an issue occurs and they tell you, no, it shouldn't happen. That issue you are saying happens only if this happens. And I feel like, how does it happen? How do you get to, it basically speaks to understanding your application and understanding the application architecture. Test maintenance. Neglecting test maintenance. This is something a lot of us battle with. This is not a one-time thing, in all honesty, something that we keep battling with. In fact, I currently have an issue around balancing it right now, because there are cases where you work on an application and it has a large chunk of test cases. Take, for example, your manual test. I currently have an automated test that has on my API. My pre-request scripts alone has about, I think, almost 70 lines, a lot of lines, and talk less of the manual test cases that is about 2,000, scenarios right now. So what now happens in this case? In situations where things are not properly, there's a lot of things you are doing, you are going to miss out on updating all of these things. And what that means is you are going to have stall tests. That's when you now realize that, oh, this person left the organization, and oh, we realize that we are not able to properly test this thing because there's probably no documentation from the previous testers and all of that. So these are also part of the mistakes that we make in most cases and in most situations. So it's always good to adopt the method where you make your changes and maintain your test as the case go. Surface or UI level design oversight. I've realized that some of us testers, in fact, me, for example, I'm not a very good colorful person. UI aesthetics are not really my thing. And one of the things that I have adopted is to sit down with people who are good at this thing. Okay, you know what? If I want to validate that this color that I'm seeing is of what I have on my design, how do I do it? How do I validate this? Ask these questions, learn it from people that actually know it. Because one of the effects, I've seen an application where you have the backend works fine and it's trying to return an error, and probably because the error is not being displayed to the customer doesn't know that anything is happening and all of that. So it happens, which is why you have the scenario where someone working on a bank application omits toast colors. You have a white background and your toast color also has a white background. However, the design is probably saying a green or a red, and you didn't pay too much of attention to it because you are focusing on, the UI, working on API integrations, application logics, and all of that. This probably eventually means you are going to have poor handling. You know, customers start complaining about things that you feel like these things should not be happening and all of that. Then we have the improper test planning. So one of the things that has really happened and that happen to people a lot of time. This is also continual. In fact, it happens to experts as well. One of them is planning your test. And when I say planning your test, you see, I adopted an approach now to make life easy for me. I want to test this application. What are those forms of tests that I want to do on it before this application gets to my customer? And in order for me to do that, I first write them down. What are my scope of tests? Is it UI? Is my test only API level? Identify all of these things at the same time. Because in most cases, you want to rush, you want to prepare this documentation and all of that. A lot of us try to do this, and eventually you see that your test plan does not cover things around, oh, we need to do some level of performance, we need to do some level of automated test, we need to do some level of this. Thereby, at the point where you realize it, you feel like, oh, well, it doesn't look good if we go on with this. Let's do this. And as such, affects the timeline. It extends the timeline a lot in some cases, and in some cases, probably a little. So it's always good to have identified all of these things. Do some level of risk assessment to look at what are those things that could even happen or go wrong if I try to meet something important for us to do. And the next thing we'll be looking at is the effect of, testers' common mistake. First one is we miss critical defects. Because by virtue of probably, when probably missing a test step or something, you miss a critical defect, probably a performance defect. A very good example here is the e-Naira application that probably went live sometimes back. Look at that application. As effective and as good as it would have been, at some point, he had to, be pulled down at some point because of bad user experiences and all of that as well. Security and performance bottlenecks, compliance failures, in some cases that are corruption or loss as well. Integration breakdown. I'm not calling a third party that I'm relying on effectively. And I probably send intermittent messages or you're sending inappropriate requests and all of that. All of this would actually happen as well. Brand reputation damage as well. This is one of the cost to organizations that could happen due to mistakes, around shipping out an application, increased development cost, as well as unstable releases where for every time you deploy, you're always having an issue here and there and all of that as well. Then how do we mitigate these mistakes? Basically, draft a test plan, take review before solidifying the plan. I took one approach while doing some of these things is whenever I'm preparing for a test, I share with colleagues that don't even work in the same organization. We are trying to build this thing. Do you think what I've done here makes sense? Do you think there's anything I've missed out? Reach out to senior colleagues, get their ideas and all of that. Acquire proper domain knowledge and skills. This is really important for us as testers. Ensure for every domain you find yourself, if you don't have the domain knowledge, try to acquire it. Try to acquire it. For example, today, I don't have the knowledge of cryptocurrency, I don't have the appropriate skill to say I want to work in a Web3 organization as of now. However, these are things that I'm already making plans to, acquire those domain knowledge. So when the opportunity comes, it doesn't look like, oh, it doesn't have this at this point. Ensure proper documentation and maintenance of artifacts. Keep, keep updated with application updates and changes. Oh, we now have multiple partners. We have multiple this there and there. Whatever happens, keep yourself updated and also love the application as your partner as well. And then lastly, testers should be the best lover because you don't just love or perfect your partner. And the same thing needs to happen about your application. Don't just test because you want to test or because it's a job you have been paid to do. Test because you see that application as a partner, you want to perfect it. And I think at this point, I would appreciate if we can ask our questions and all of that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mubarak, for that very insightful session. And yeah, the floor is open for question and answers. Please use the chat section or the Q&A session to ask your questions.
Yeah, let's have a quiz first before Q&A. Did you get it?
Yeah, all right.
Mm. So hi guys, we have a quick quiz, just 5 questions. Let's attempt this in the next 3 to 5 minutes. Well, the next 3 minutes we should be done. Then we can move to question and answer.
Okay, I realize that panelists can't take part. Is it that you don't want us to take out of the gift?
Mhm. You want to cheat. All the questions coming from your slide, so don't come and win the prize. What is the major consequence of neglecting test maintenance? Why is domain knowledge important for testers? What is the benefit of testers understanding application architecture? What happens when testers don't stay updated with application changes? And how can tester ensure effective testing? Yeah. So we have 1 more minute to go. So far, 61% total participants have attempted the quiz. 67%. Let's get it to 80. Thanks, Mubarak. We want to see more of you, more of your sessions, more training, more knowledge share. Yeah, less than 30 seconds, 20 seconds to go. Three, two, 1, 0. All right, thanks for everyone that participated. Right now, I'm going to end the pool and we can see our results. All right, then over to you, Jennifer Mubarak. So for Q&A, you can drop your question on the chat or you raise your hand and Jennifer unmutes you.
Okay, hi Mubarak. We have two questions in the Q&A section rather.
So the first question states, how do you handle updating test artifacts when you're in a fast-paced environment, e.g. a SaaS project that deals with customer requests? So thank you. One of the ways that I try, or one of the approach that I'm currently employing in my case, I would share that is that for everything I test, no matter how small it is, the test case that I'm going to use for that, or for every test I'm doing, it has to affect the test case. And what that means is that there's a customer request for us to implement something, or that something is not working. I don't go ahead to say I want to create a test case for that feature out of my current documentation. No, it sits within my artifacts. That's one. Another thing is because it's a fast-paced environment, everything is happening. You're hearing QA there, QA here, QA, and all of that. And what happens there, or what usually happens, is that you get overwhelmed. So I try to keep my cool and try to be clear on what needs to be done. Oh, I need to do this. So please do give me some time to do this. And probably, if possible, give a reasonable timeline as well. That would ensure you do your proper documentation. One of the things that I have seen or that I've observed is that in most cases, when you try to do everything ahead and ensure that yes, to just get things done, you don't eventually go back to it. So I like to impose it on myself, that discipline that this has to go along with, that thing at this point in time. So it doesn't look like, oh, I left it to come and do it later, but I forgot. No, I want to do it as it goes. And one of that approach is that put a discipline on yourself. If possible, um, inform a reporting line that could probably help you enforce that discipline on yourself. Say, okay, I'm not seeing your test case for this. I'm not seeing your test case update for this. And as such, you're able to keep an updated document. I think that would answer the first question. Then, how do functional and non-functional tests complement each other? This is quite an interesting question because a lot of us look at functional as the major thing. However, functional and non-functional are like yin and yang. One balances out each other, right? So that's the way it basically works. So imagine your application works well, it works fine, no bugs and all of that. Unfortunately, the application is slow or the application is not secured. All of these things basically show that for an application to be cool or for an application to be totally good, it means that the processes or the components have to complement each other. Which means if I have an application that does not have a bug, but it lacks the performance side of things, or it lacks the security side of things, it basically doesn't work well. So they are like, just like I said, yin and yang that balances out each other. So your non-functional is, in fact, non-functional are more of determinants, are more of things that can even let customer lose hope in your application faster. Yes, the application works fine. You're able to make your transfer and all of that. However, when I make transfer on your application, for me to even complete the transfer process, I have to do about maybe I have to spend 5 minutes on that process. Take for example, right, and it just makes people think, oh no, these people are not serious. For example, to put an example to that, Zap, the pay stacks app that was just built, the mindset behind it was from bringing out your phone that you want to make a transfer up until the recipient receiving it. Everything should be within a 30 seconds time gap, which means I'm bringing out my phone, I'm trying to unlock my phone, launch the app, send the money, and all of that. Everything within a 30 seconds time gap. What that means is the team has been able to seamlessly integrate the performance as well as the functional together to give sorry, my English now, I don't know what to say again. A stable application. Another question here is, how do you balance your test process when the workload is a lot? This is something a lot of us battle with, and which is one of the best and the most stable approach is to have a solidified process. That's one. Then the second one is in situations where you don't have a solidified process, discipline, make it a discipline for yourself. And when you make it a discipline for yourself, one of the ways that I have loved to do this is to ensure that if I have a reporting line that I know that what I do goes through this person, all of that, I inform this person that I need us to have this so that it puts the testers in check. And as such, because I know that there's a reviewing party that reviews what I have to do, it doesn't help you compromise the level of quality that you have to achieve on the application. So it's always good. In situations where the workload is crazy, it happens, just try to make it a discipline. And a situation where you feel like, oh, this discipline thing is not going to work. I have, how do I put this in English now? Have a reporting line, be an enforcer of such discipline on you. Oh, I need your help with this. Give yourself some buffer to get stable with this discipline that you need to get with, and over time it's going to become a part of you, and you'll be able to manage your test process even when the workload is a lot, because there are things that you have to do, and the reporting line will probably not enable you proceed with your work without those things. How do you handle a situation where you are starting to test the product, you need to know available information? Your exploratory testing used limited understanding, and no one is willing to provide an in-depth explanation. I've seen myself in this situation at some points. And one of the things that I hated most at that point was that a lot of blames were being shifted on QA, and I kept feeling like, what is QA doing wrong? So one of the things I try to do is, yes, everybody, in fact, everybody's always forming busy in, especially in this tech world, everybody's always forming busy, And one of the things that I have tried to adopt as part of myself is, if I need to sit on your neck, I don't mind having to do it, Yes, everybody will say they are busy, I'm not able to do this, there's no documentation. One of the things I do is to come over to you myself. If I need to make out time out of my personal time, say probably my weekends, or probably even have to come over to you to say, when I probably have to come over to you to sit down with you, understand what does this model do, what does this model do. There was at a point I transitioned job, and when I saw the application, I realized that no, this is not something I want to just pick up and start testing when there's no documentation. I reached out to various persons in the team, understood who understand the application, and on the Saturday we handled a meetup. I'd go over to meet the person. We had an extensive discussion of about almost 8 hours, trying to understand the way the application works and all of that. And, that gives you some level of understanding to it. So don't just take it that everybody is busy. No, you have to sit down people's neck. If you have to, send messages at some point, set a reminder to probably keep reminding the person that has that level of information that, oh, I still need this. Keep sending reminders, and at some point, you need to do some minor level of escalation that would help you get the person's attention. Please do. That's one of the best ways in situations where there are no documentation or artifacts. How do you handle regression tests for large applications where you have to test multiple features and release in a short amount of time without automation tests? So one of the things that I would advise you do here is, firstly, build up, I would say, a sanity checklist where you have your core functionalities, anything that deals with processes and all of that, you have them mapped out depending on your test list. So as such, in situations like this, after you have tested the functionality implementation or the test that needs to be done, you have a lightweighted form of test case that you can use to validate that everything works and the core functionalities are not broken. Then your processes, do the validation of your process to say, okay, when I do this, it's expected that this actually happens, and it's actually happening. You split them into things that come into lower chunks, so it looks easy, or it is easier at that point. Since there are no automation tests, and also consider automation. So one of the things that I have learned is that having to work with our regular 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, whatever it is, there's usually a lot of work. And at that point, as a tester, you say you want to start automating, it looks like, does this person even know what's next? You have a task that you need to test, and you say you want to write automated tests, especially in startups and organizations that don't have solidified process. So also, I try to advise people to invest extra time into putting it in place, even if it is for your own personal use. You know, you have it in place. I know I have my level of automation on my own end, and at least when I have to do a lab test, I know that this level of the test, I have the automated test, and I can use that to avoid the manual process on that side, and it would really help down the line. How do you go about testing and app documentation? Where do you start from as a newbie? So what I would start from first is understanding the application. Um, as much as you understand the application, you are able to you are able to understand it. Relate the application to what you do or what you use, and as such, it makes it easy. That's where I will start from. Then, having understood the application, go ahead to do my documentation and what I've used that I need to do. How do you know that error dependency is an issue while testing? What error message will you get? Um, so I think what happens here. Oh, sorry. How do you know that dependency is an issue while testing? What error message will you get? So the thing around dependencies and knowing that dependency is an issue while testing is a bit complicated. When I say it's a bit complicated, it requires you having to do some level of drill down. So take for example, let's picture a bank. Say for example, QA Tech Growth Bank, for example. My bank as a customer comes and it fires up this application and I pass in my BVN and the verification is failing, right? Obviously, QA Group Bank did not build their verification service inside. They are probably relying on a third party. But because it's failing at that point, could be of any reason, it requires you to drill down, which is where application logs and a few metrics here and there now comes in within from the development team. So you are able to drill down by taking a look at your application logs to say, okay, what happened at this point? Oh, we send the request to so partner. Oh, so partner is probably down. We are unable to reach their test server and all of that. Those are the ways. So it's a bit tricky and complicated because it's not something you just want to say, oh, this is how it works, and it's clearly defined. Yes, we have error handlings. However, it's not every organization that have standard error handling, and you know that this is what works for this and this is what works for that. So how do you handle situations where software developers tell you a defect you raised is not a showstopper when you know it will be a big problem in the end? Well, one of the things I try to do here is to use what we call the systematic escalation. So having discussed with you and I realized that you are not seeing the things from my end, I involve higher parties than both you and I. In this case, probably your line manager, probably the product manager, that will see what I am saying, that this thing I'm foreseeing we need to look like this on a level of risk or charts and everything. And the person ensuring the person sees the picture in my mind. When the person sees the bigger picture, obviously the mandate comes in, because in most cases you see things like this usually cause a level of arguments, fighting around between testers and developer. No, it's a bug, you have to fix it and all of that. No, I employ the systematic escalation. Reach out to the next person in line for the escalation. Let the person understand why you think this is this. If the person sees the bigger picture, you are in luck. When the mandate is, oh, Mubarak, you have to fix this issue. Mubarak has no option than to do the error fix and get it across to you. So we also have in a scenario where a tester proceed with testing based on assumption rather than confirmed requirements. How do you resolve the situation and adjust the approach moving forward? So the first thing here is first understand that you have made a mistake. Then go ahead to do the proper thing. What's the proper thing? Get the proper requirements, the actual requirements that works for the application. Get that, then use that to structure your test and avoid situations where you are working on assumptions. One of my mentors would always say, ask questions. In fact, it's better for you to look dumb because you're asking a question rather than for you to look smart because you did not ask the question and end up doing rubbish. So I try to take that, ensure that since you have identified your mistake, get the actual requirements, use the requirement to structure the appropriate test, and ensure that going forward, you don't make assumptions. Get confirmation no matter how small it is. Another question is, how long can you work as a manual tester before you moving into automation? Well, this depends on you as a person, or me as a person in this case. I've seen people that full transitioning, they probably did 3, 4 months, some did 6 months, some probably do, depending on your level of assimilation and understanding of test processes. So, do you see yourself as someone that understood the test process and understands how to manage it? So one of the things that I've learned is that a lot of us see test automation as I know how to test and you want to go. No, you need to have absorbed the understanding of testing processes. You understand manual testing, then take on the approach of saying we need to automate this. So it falls back onto you. Assess yourself. Do you think I'm ready to now say, okay, have I been able to, have you built that level of experience or that level of knowledge that encompass that you're able to get the appropriate coverage, or at least close to appropriate coverage while testing application manually before considering automation? What's the best approach to design tests? Well, the best approach is the ideal approach, and the ideal approach is basically you um, getting the proper requirements, prepare your test plan, document your test cases, and execute your test report whatever issues found and all of that as well. Ensure that you are basically ensure every stage is adhered to. Document whatever it is that needs to be documented, and ensure you do proper follow-ups. Ensure your bugs are fixed and all of that. Carry the team along. Basically, be agile with it. What procedures can a tester put in place to ensure testing is not only validating the expected outcome, but also identifying potential edge cases? So the best answer to this is the tester's level of understanding of the application that they are testing. Why did I say the tester's level of application? Is because when you want to put an approach in place for something like this, everybody that joins the team will not understand that, oh, this is this and this at the same time. You have to put a process in place to bring the person to the expert level of it. So take, for example, let's pick an authentication service. You know that a blocked user should not be able to log in. That is an edge case in this case. Oh, when users are blocked, they should not be able to log in unless they have been unblocked. All of these things deals down with the knowledge you have of the product. Oh, so in some cases, users are not probably blocked, they are locked, or users are deactivated. What happens in these cases? When I try to log in, what error message do I get? These are edge cases for authentications. And one of the things here is having understood how it works, you are able to identify these potential edge cases. Edge cases are not things that you probably want to say, I read the requirement and I did not think of any. No, there are things that you digest your requirement, you digest your application requirements, and I think you can put some things in place. Make it an habit. Break the application. Don't stick with, oh, yes, user is blocked and user are not able to log in. What happens? I'm probably someone that has been inactive on your application for about 6 months. And a friend told me, oh, they now have this feature and I'm coming back to come and use it. What happens in this case, as well? So make it, basically have the breaking mindset. I think that's the best answer I can put to that right now. How do you ensure that automation does not cause you to miss manual exploratory testing opportunities? Well, the best approach to that is that make it a discipline for yourself. I need to explore the application, define a process, make it a discipline. Why I say make it a process is that at the higher level, automation does not sit on your laptop or on your local device. These are automated tests are integrated into pipelines. And what that means is that for every deployment, the automated test would roll on for for the deployment to be successful or for the deployment process to be completed. So it falls down to how you want to handle it and all of that. Basically, for that, that's the best I can think of right now. If I probably have any answer to that later, I would get back to you. So someone here is saying, can you go over to the quiz and tell us the solutions? I think there's something wrong with my results. Okay, we'll take a look at that. So is there any concrete approach in ensuring that test cases are valid and effective across multiple upgrades or feature updates? Well, the best approach that I know of as of today is to ensure that your document does not become stored. Always update it. We are making a feature before we are using username and password to log in. However, due to some things, we have decided that we are providing users with the option to sign in with their Gmail instead. Ensure you have updated that change into it. Carry yourself along. As one of my very good friends will say, you do bomber to bomber. You know, you do bomber to bomber. Ensure that this change is coming in or is already in, and we have to test it. Ensure you update your test artifacts. That way, is valid and it's also effective. When you know that we are going to utilize Google authentication now, you now need to start up thinking, okay, if I'm not logged in on my device and I try to utilize Google authentication, what happens? That opens you up to to updates, to edge cases and all of that, basically. So is it okay to feel bad when someone else found a bug on a product you tested? Yes. And as a tester, if you don't feel bad when someone else found a bug on an application you tested, you need to reconsider what is happening. There's a very common song between I think in this period that says Emomolile, which basically means someone with a hard heart. And that doesn't apply to us as software testers. Which is why I said love your application as your partner. So when you know that I've tested this application and someone found a bug, understand the processes that caused today's bug so that you can take in that approach and use it to widen your test coverage to cover whatever edge cases or whatever scenario that might have caused that. So it's, in fact, if you don't feel bad, it is bad for you not to feel bad, or when someone find a bug on an application or a product you tested, it's something that you know you have to feel bad. When you are now not feeling bad about it, it becomes a problem. So that's all questions we have here. Thank you very much, guys. So Jennifer, I think over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mubarak. Yeah, and
Thank you,
thank you
Jennifer.
for um keeping enough time to answer enough questions. And if we have more questions, we can always drop our questions on the WhatsApp group. Yeah. And if you've taken anything from tonight's session, not if you've definitely taken something from tonight's session. So I want you to go on LinkedIn, type your key takeaway and tag us. Use the hashtag. I'll share it on the WhatsApp group, and let's keep the conversation rolling. Yeah, thank you everyone for a very wonderful session. Hi, Toby.
Yeah, I'm not for my thanks,
Do you
Mubarak.
want to add anything? Do you want to add anything before we round up?
No, nothing else.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and do have a great night.